Hey guys, my name is Destiny and I'm here at the Shreveport Aquarium to talk with you about coral. So coral is a pretty complex creature. Biologists still don't quite know how to classify it today, so we're going to talk a little bit about it. We're going to talk about what it is, we're going to talk about some environmental problems that it faces, and we're going to get to watch one of our husbandry specialists feed our coral. So first let's talk about what it is. Coral is an animal. It looks very much like a plant. It looks like almost undersea flowers. It has bright colors. It kind of waves in the tide like a leaf or a blade of grass would. But it's an animal. Not only is it one animal, every single coral that we see is a collection of thousands of individual polyps. So every coral is made of thousands and thousands of polyps that are working together as a team to form the whole coral. And then of course, when you put lots of coral side by side, you have a coral reef. So not only are individual coral polyps working together to form a coral, but the coral polyp individually has another very important teammate called zooxanthellae, which is a kind of algae that lives inside of it. So the zooxanthellae and the coral polyp have a relationship called symbiosis. They're in a symbiotic relationship, and that means that both of the animals benefit from that relationship. So the algae is getting a safe place to grow and live inside of the coral, and then the coral is getting an unlimited food supply because the algae is going to take sunlight and photosynthesize it into oxygen and sugars, which is a favorite food for the corals. So the algae makes food for the corals. The algae is called zooxanthellae. That's actually what gives coral its beautiful colors. There's different colored algae, and that's why we have different colored corals. And I know that algae can photosynthesize just like a tree or a bush because I can see it, and I'm gonna show you. Here we go. So here we are in our shipwreck gallery. Here are the lionfish. Hey lionfish, there's the pufferfish. Hello pufferfish. But what I want you to look at is those bubbles. Do you see the bubbles that are on that rock right there? So that rock is covered in algae, and that algae is busy photosynthesizing and making oxygen. So those bubbles are all pure oxygen. So now if you come and visited the aquarium under regular circumstances, this would have a ton more oxygen bubbles on it. But we have turned off a lot of our UV lights in order to conserve energy because we are a green business, so we're looking to conserve energy everywhere that we can. But those bubbles are all breathable oxygen. So more of the oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean than it does from terrestrial plants or forests. That's why it's so important to keep the surface of the ocean clean so that sunlight can get through to our photosynthetic friends so they can keep making oxygen for us. So because of that photosynthesis, some carbon dioxide is good. A natural amount of carbon dioxide is what lets our carbon cycle happen. So a natural amount would be created by the natural decay of animals and organic matter, by us exhaling. Every single animal that exhales is contributing carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. When it gets a little tricky is when we have an industrial amount of carbon dioxide being put into the atmosphere. We all have cars that we drive. Cars make carbon dioxide. Any industrial factory that has a production line makes tons of carbon. So when we get to industrial amounts of carbon in our atmosphere, that's when things can go a little wrong. And the reason that we don't need that much carbon dioxide is because it's acidic. And I'm going to show you. Here we go. Hey guys, we're here at the Salt restaurant here at the Shreveport Aquarium to talk a little bit about carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is something that's all around us all the time. You've probably eaten it before if you've ever had one of these. This being a Dr. Pepper or a Coke or a Sprite, any soda has all these little bubbles, and those little bubbles, if you can see them, those little bubbles are all carbon dioxide, so CO2. Now we want to prove today that CO2, carbon dioxide, is acidic and that it's making our oceans more acidic. And the way we're going to do that is by testing its pH. So pH is a measure of how acidic something is. It works on a scale from 0 to 14. The lower the number is, the more acidic it is. So right in the middle of the scale, something that's not acidic and not basic is water. So water comes in at exactly 7 on the 0 to 14 scale. So it's in the middle, it's water, it's neutral. So we're gonna test that real quick. So I've got my water button here. I'm gonna get us some water. And I have a pH reader here. Let's see what that number goes to when we put it in water. Where are we at? 6.5. So tap water, bottled waters can come in anywhere between 6.5 to 7.2 because of different minerals that different companies put in their water. So we're rocking a 6.5 right now. That's a good neutral. So now we're gonna test something called soda water. And soda water is just water that has the bubbles added from soda, carbon dioxide. So you can see here that soda water is pretty much an exact cross between soda and water. So water with bubbles. And we're gonna take the pH of the soda water. So the only ingredients here are water and CO2. Let's see what happens. Whoa, 4.5. So just by adding CO2 to the water, carbon dioxide, we've dropped the acidity 2 whole points. We've gone from a 6.5 to a 4.5. So adding carbon dioxide to the water, whether it's here in soda or in the oceans, adding carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to our oceans has dropped the acidity immensely. And the carbon dioxide that's in our atmosphere, in the air, winds up in the water from a property of water called adhesion. Water is very sticky. And I can actually show you that it's sticky with a little activity that we're about to do. So for this activity, we're gonna use a property of water called adhesion. Water is very sticky. That's why you sometimes see water droplets sticking to the side of the sink or to a blade of grass. Because if it wasn't sticky, if it didn't have adhesion, gravity would just make it fall back down to earth. But it is sticky, so it likes to stick to its surface. And we're gonna use that property. So you can take any piece of paper and make yourself an obstacle course, or maybe a maze. I'm gonna go start
here. We'll start, and I'm gonna make a maze. I'm gonna have to make it wiggle. This is my finish line. So I'm gonna put some hidden things in there so that it looks like a maze.
So I've drawn a maze for my water. And now I'm going to cover it with something plastic. A lamination pouch would be really good for this. I'm using a Ziploc bag, whatever you have. All right, now that I have my maze all ready, I'm gonna take a drop of water and put it down at my starting line here. Boop. All right, so now you can see if you can use a toothpick or a pencil to guide your drop of water through your maze, because it has that property that we talked about called adhesion. See how it sticks? And you can guide your water drop through the maze. So you can either make mazes and swap them with your brother or sister, or make one for yourself and see how quickly you can guide your little water droplet through the obstacle course. And remember, it's that property called adhesion that lets the water be really sticky and stick to the Q-tip or the toothpick or the pencil. So that property of water is called adhesion. And that property is also what's make water sticky to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So the surface of the ocean is very, very sticky because of the adhesion, and it picks up and sticks to a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. See? And then you've moved your water droplet all the way through the maze because of adhesion. All right, here's Sam. Hello.
All right, so we've got two things here with us. We have our calcium carbonate, so our sea creature skeletons, so what we might find in the base of a coral reef or in the shells of gastropods or any number of other animals who live in the ocean and take calcium out of the water to build their skeletons. And what we have here is some acid. Now this is muriatic acid. This is much stronger than we're going to find directly in the ocean, but it's a nice idea, it's a nice way to see a sped up version of what happens when our calcium carbonate meets acid. And so that's pretty dramatic. That's happening much faster than we would see happening in our oceans. But as we see our oceans absorbing more acid and becoming more acidic, we're seeing that these skeletons, first, they're not able to build themselves up. It's too acidic for them to build new portions of themselves. And then if the pH drops enough, you're going to start to see them falling apart. So like we saw here, not quite so dramatically, but it gives you a little bit of an idea of why it's important to keep our oceans nice and basic.
All right, friends, we've talked about a lot today. We've talked about what coral is. We've talked about how carbon dioxide affects it because of its acidity. We've talked about how carbon dioxide even gets into the water through that property of adhesion. So now that we know all about coral, we're gonna make some coral art. And I'm gonna start with 5 different paints. I have white, light blue, a true blue, a navy, and black paint. Now you don't have to paint your background. You can certainly do this with a colored background or using some ocean construction paper, some nice blue construction paper. But I picked 5 paints because I want to talk to you a little bit about the layers of the ocean. So I'll scoop these over. We're gonna start with white at the very top of our paper. And this white is gonna represent a place in the ocean called the sunlight zone. So I'm gonna put one little strip of that at the very top. Now the sunlight zone only goes about 300 feet down. So this is where all human ocean activities occur. It's where we boat, it's where we dive, it's where we swim. We don't go far past 300 feet. Most of us will never go past 15 to 40 feet. So that's the very, very top layer of the ocean. The sunlight zone is where more than 90% of all marine life occurs. So most of the life in the ocean relies on sunlight. So it's going to happen up close where the sunlight is in the water. So as we go a little bit deeper, we get into the twilight zone. So there's a little less sun here. The sun's being filtered out by algae and planktons and fish and rocks. So there's a little less sunlight here. It goes about 3,000 feet deep. The sunlight zone was 300 feet. The twilight zone is 3,000 feet deep. This is where bioluminescence starts. So this is where you start getting those glowing jellyfish and bioluminescent fish. We actually have an animal here at the Shreveport Aquarium that lives in the twilight zone. This is where our deep dwelling animals live. And that would be our Japanese spider crabs. So not a whole lot of light. And one layer below that, so we've gotten the sunlight zone, we've gotten the twilight zone. Next is the midnight zone. So no light at all here, the midnight zone. This layer goes 13,000 feet deep. And if there's no sunlight in the water, it's incredibly cold. All the water at this level is going to be right above freezing, so it's going to be between 35 to 37 degrees. Very, very cold, with the exception of where geothermal vents are. So anytime the Earth's surface is cracked and you have a vent, that water is going to be almost 800 degrees. So you have a very radical environment. You can go from 33 degrees and then a couple yards away, 800 degrees. So very, very radical environment. After the sunlight and twilight and midnight, we have the abyssal zone. So this is where we kind of think of those crazy sea creatures. We have anglerfish and goblin sharks and gulper eels and tripod fish. So that's kind of where all those monsters of the deep When we think about those creatures, the abyss is kind of their zone. Giant squids, for instance, are going to be in the abyssal zone. And then, way down, the very, very bottom of the ocean is the trenches. So this is probably the least explored habitat on Earth because we just can't get there. We have some guesses as biologists as to what it might look like. One of our guesses, one of our hypotheses is that because everything that is decaying in the upper layer falls all the way down to the bottom, so any decomposing kills from predators, so lots of maybe a whale corpse or fish as they die have to go all the way to the bottom as they decay and sink. So we are guessing it's very, very nutrient rich so that it has a ton of microbial life, but we're not for sure. And now this zone goes almost more than 35,000 feet deep. Mount Everest is only 27,000 feet tall, so you can sink Mount Everest in the deepest part of the ocean and still have a couple of thousand feet to go before you hit the bottom. So the deepest part of the ocean is way deeper than the highest point on the planet. So now, let's see, I'm going to grab a paintbrush and we are going to blend. So we're going to blend these together so that we have a nice background for our ocean art. So sunlight, twilight, midnight, abyssal, and the trenches. There you go. So now we have our ocean layers. Now there are some pretty amazing feats in the ocean. So even though whales typically live in that sunlight zone, they can dive at about 1,500 feet. So they can dive halfway down the twilight zone. That's where they're going to do their hunting for giant squid and those types of things. I'm going to put some waves in the water, so I'm going to kind of wiggle my paintbrush. Bloop, bloop. And now we have our layers of the ocean art. So sunlight, twilight, midnight, abyssal, and trench. Alright, so now that our ocean layers background is dry, it's time to make our coral. So the materials that we need are very simple. I have some tissue paper, like gift wrap tissue paper. Mine are cut into squares, but you can just rip them into small pieces. You need a pencil, or any kind of stick will do actually, a marker, a dowel rod, a glue stick, and some glue. So now what we're going to do, so now I'm going to put coral all over my art because that's what art's about. But if we thought about it, so we know that coral houses zooxanthellae, the algae, and the algae needs sunlight to make food. And we know that sunlight there's not sunlight in every single layer of the ocean. So what layer do you think corals would grow at if they need sunlight? So they're definitely not going to grow down here in the trenches. So most of the coral grows way up at the surface in the sunlight zone because they need sunlight to photosynthesize. I'm going to put coral all over my ocean though, because that's what I want my art to be. So to do this, it's very simple. You take your bit of tissue paper, you're going to wrap it around the eraser of your pencil, dip it in glue, and then put it in your ocean. And as you repeat that a few times, you can watch your coral reef grow. Now, real coral grows very slowly, probably 0.5 centimeter to 3 centimeters a year. It's one of the reasons it's so important to protect, because it grows so slowly, but it's an incredibly important habitat in our oceans. It provides protection for a lot of smaller fish. A lot of fish lay their eggs in coral reefs to protect them from predators. But they grow very, very slowly. But as I continue to wrap tissue paper around a pencil, dip it in glue and put it in my ocean, I am growing my own coral reef.
Doing a few more here. So, wrap it. And dip. Wrap it. And dip. Wrap it. And dip. And after you
My pencil, gonna dip it in the glue. Then I'm going to push it here and lift up. And we have an awesome 3D coral reef growing in our ocean right now. And after you have a coral reef in your ocean and your ocean dries, you can go back and add some fish. And you don't need to paint a background. You can also use blue construction paper or anything else. You can draw a background with crayons or markers, whatever you like. All right, now that we've learned about coral and made some coral art, our husbandry specialist, Sam, that's Sam, hi Sam, is gonna feed the corals for us, so we get to watch.
Hello everybody. We're going to feed our corals today. These are the only live corals we have in the aquarium that get fed like this. And because we have so many of them in such a fairly small tank, when we feed them, because we have to put in so much food, we want to keep our water clean, we like to feed them right up close. So I'm going to be using this little turkey baster, and then that way I can go make sure everybody gets enough to eat, but I'm not putting too much food that's going to be uneaten, that's going to make the water messy. So in order to do that, have my turkey baster and I have the food here. It doesn't really look like much. So this is a combination of things that small animals who live in the reef like to eat. And so our corals will eat some of this, and some of our smaller fish you might see coming out to pick at it as well. So this is a combination of small invertebrates, of some algae, really a good mixture of things that if you're a very small animal, you're going to be able to eat. And we use different sizes because some of our corals will have smaller polyps and be able to take in smaller food. Some will be larger, and like I said, our little fish, especially our gobies, like to come up and take some of the bigger pieces. So in order to do this, we want to make sure that all of our good food goes into our corals and not down out of our tank and into our filter. So while we feed them, first thing I'm going to do is turn our pump off. So that's going to keep this water from circulating. So normally our water is going to leave the tank, go down through here, what we call a sump. It's going to have a filter bag, so take out any of the big pieces of gunk that's in there. It's going to have what we call a foam fractionator. It's going to take out proteins and oils, and then it's going to get cycled back around through our UV sterilizer unit. This is what's called a GFO reactor. These are all different things that we use to make the water just perfect for our corals. But right now, none of these are working because I've got it turned off. And so while we have it in here, we also have what we call a power head. So this is just a little fan that goes in the water that keeps it moving around. So even though we don't have new water coming in and draining out, the water that's inside of here is going to be moving. And that's going to be important for the second half of the feed. But to start, I'm going to turn that off as well. And so why I did this is this means that when I'm going in and target feeding all of our corals, the food that goes on them is going to stay more or less right there. And they're going to have a few seconds to really take in anything they want right away. And then about halfway through the feed, I'm going to turn this back on. And that's going to move all of that stuff around, still not coming out of the tank. So that's why anybody who gets missed is going to get a lot to eat. And the corals make my job really easy because they tend to grow and do the best in those areas of high flow where they're going to get caught with that food. So the ones who I miss, the ones who maybe I'm a little bit heavy-handed or light-handed, they're going to be growing in places where once the current starts up, any of that good leftover food is going to get caught. So there's not much more to see up here, but we're going to pause for just 1 second, and you're going to go to the front of the tank and see our corals eat.
So there Sam is feeding the corals. And so we talked earlier how a coral is actually a collection of hundreds of separate polyps working together. So for instance, this green Kenya tree coral up here, each one of those separate green bulbs is its own polyp. So no telling how many hundreds of polyps are working together to create this coral. And then corals work together to make a reef. All right, we have learned a ton today. So quick recap, we know what coral is. We know that it's an animal. Not only is it an animal, it's a collection of animals. It is a collection of animals that relies on photosynthesis from the algae that lives inside of it. We know that coral is very slow growing and that it's very vulnerable to acid in our oceans. We learned that the acid comes from carbon dioxide. We learned that the carbon dioxide gets into the water through the property of adhesion. So we've learned a ton about our environment and corals today, and I hope you come see it for yourself at the Shreveport Aquarium next month because we miss you guys and can't wait to have you back. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Bye!